Inclusive Poetry Fringe at Stone Writers Week. So,
yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks Beck and James for what you said. And it just strikes me that we're all in the same boat, you know, because we're all looking for a bit of justice, a bit of equality. And as Laura said, I'm a founder member of KWIN. For those who might not have heard of it, the Kerry Women's Interactive Network. We campaigned for better lives for women, I suppose, in Kerry particularly, generally, you know, as well, but in Kerry in particular, and highlighted inequalities and financial and economic inequalities and other aspects that affect women's lives. And then the pension campaign was looking as well about how women are discriminated against when it comes to pension, and we found out that in actual fact that it's a number of women. One of the main reasons, of course, is women staying at home to bring up the most important job in the country is bringing up children, I think. But also women who are forced to leave employment because of the marriage bar. So, you know, there were all kinds of reasons, but there were 25% of the people who have been discriminated against in the pension setup were men, and they were in that position because they were mainly working in the hospitality industry. So it's all about stamps. It's all about, you know, it's all about paperwork and ticking boxes and not valuing. And I'm here about women, talk about women's situation tonight. So it's all about a stamp. So I don't know how many stamps you can put down for spending all day with, you know, children. I don't know how many stamps you get for that. I suspect a lot more than we do get. So I think we all know women are not starting off from a level playing field anyway in our society. And I'll give you a few numbers. I won't give you too many. Women on average are paid 14% less than men. We're supposed to live in an age where there's equal pay. I can't remember how many years equal pay is the law in this country. I know it was 1975 in the UK. I'm not sure. It's here a long time anyway. Equal pay, and still we don't have equal pay. I mean, why is that we don't have equal pay? So this is one of the reasons that women bear the brunt when, as Beck said about hikes in the cost of living, women bear the brunt of it. Because in general, women have fewer resources, less wealth, and of course paid less. And one of the reasons that women have low-paid jobs and part-time jobs as well is because they have the responsibilities of getting the children to school in the morning. And you know, you all know this. Picking them up in the evening, or maybe looking after elderly relatives. So they are actually restricted and limited in what kind of work they can look for because of what they do for free. What we do, I should say, for free. And that's the caring services that we provide to society. 6 out of 10 low-paid workers are women, and 86% of lone parents are women. And they, like women in general, have less wealth, less savings, less land, less even cars, less likely to own their own homes. You know, so the National One Parent Family Alliance says that one-parent families are more at risk of poverty and exclusion and more likely to experience homelessness. One of the awful consequences of this as well is women who are in violent situations where they're in a violent home and they are not in a position to leave because of financial constrictions. And sometimes, even when they leave, they go back again to the violent partner because they can't live with the poverty for themselves and their children, you know. So it affects women in all sorts of circumstances, you know. And I think that you know, until we have economic parity, I don't think we're ever going to have any other kind of equality. I really do believe that economic equality is vital for women. And just a few things that I wanted to mention as well. Particularly on the discourse of the taxpayer, we've all heard politicians and other commentators talk about the taxpayer, as if there's the taxpayer or really good people paying for the rest of people who are not taxpayers. And this discourse really raises my hackles every time I hear it, because we're all taxpayers. Because nobody can live in this country without being a taxpayer. So I would like to see that phrase removed, the taxpayer. You know, because that's more divisive language that we get, you know. So there's the people who are the people who are not paying tax? I'd like to know, are they living off grid up the mountain somewhere? I don't know, maybe they are.
Because every if you go into shopping, you buy something,
Comments
you say
after
tax.
the speakers, thank you very much. Comments after speakers have spoken,
Oh, yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
So I think that in you know, seconding a lot of what Bex said, you know, like, I mean, if you increase benefits, for example, or if you increase the minimum day rate, for example, I don't think people are going to be opening bank accounts in the Bahamas with that money. That money is going to be circulated in the community locally, almost entirely locally. It's taxed again. So the money is still circulating in here, you know. It's not, as I said, it's going to disappear down a hole. So it's all to do with how they're telling us the story, you know. It's all to do with the narrative at the moment, you know, and how where money is coming from and where it's going. I would question anything I hear around that sort of thing. So we have to, I think, ask ourselves what kind of social engineering is going on with the policies that we have at the moment, that we live under at the moment. Because none of these decisions are made by chance. None of the things that Beck has talked about, or James has talked about, happen by chance. They're all designed. We live in a society that's designed. We're led to believe that capitalism is like laissez-faire, you know, everything just kind of works in a nice little rhythm. I don't believe that for a second. I'm sure you don't either, you know. And just to say, Becky, you did terrific on the radio the other morning. And when Jerry O'Sullivan asked you if this was going to be a campaign like the water campaign, where, you know, people stood up and said, enough. It could well be. It could well be if we stand together. And it is all to do with us standing together and not, I mean, there's a lot of people here tonight, and I'm sure we all have our own ideas about different things. But if we have a common purpose about this and stand together with this, we can have our diverse ideas as well, because, as I said, I'm sure we would all agree on everything. But that's why the water charges campaign worked, because people stood on that issue, stood together on that issue. So I think that's really important. And of course, it's nice to see our public representative here tonight. Daly, it's nice to see you. Nice to see you in person. And I think we need to lobby our public representatives about this as well. If we do it through emails, I think everybody now has an email, or if we meet them in person. And just every chance you get, express how you feel about the hikes in the cost of living, how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your family, how it's a decision, as you said at the beginning, Laura, eat or eat, you know. And again, like Beck said, I think we're rated number 15 in the world as the world's richest country. You know, one of the richest countries in the world. Now that's pretty high. So the money is there. The money is there, and that's the other thing I wanted to say. We've been told over the years, or they're still telling us, the money isn't there. We can't do that. The money isn't. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? As if we're not citizens of this state, as if this money is not ours, as if they don't work for us. So I think it's very important that we realise the money is there, but we need to have input into the decisions of how that money is spent. And that's what this campaign is about, having our input into how the money is spent. So the money isn't there, that just drives me insane. And I just have to say, we had an incident at one of the public meetings in the Stole about the pensions. And this was being discussed about, you know, that's the first thing they tell you about, you know, if you're looking for pension parity or any kind of parity, the money isn't, you know, we do it, but the money isn't there, you know, of course, like, be sensible about it, the money isn't there. So by the time a local politician came in, I mean, he wasn't attacked physically, but people were so angry because the first thing out of his mouth was, the money isn't there. Okay, so we're not taking that as an answer. So I wish everybody well, and we're going to have a great campaign. We're going to change it.
Thanks very much for that, Marion. So the last speaker tonight is Daly, who's the lead Sinn Fein here in Kerry, as a solicitor and Sinn Fein spokesperson for equality, law reform and integration. Locally, he's involved with the local soccer and GA clubs, as well as the Tralee Part 1, and he also founded the Tralee Right to Water campaign. So.
Yeah, thanks very much to everyone for coming, and thanks to the organising committee, to Beck and Marion, to James, Deirdre, who was involved as well, and to yourself, Laura. I'd like to thank James in particular for all the help that he's given us over the years with his great friend Mossy Kelleher, who passed away earlier on this year. And if we were ever short on something, whether it was an electric wheelchair, or if we needed someone's house cleaned out in a hurry and we couldn't do it, we'd go to James, and he would try and help us out with that, and he continues to do that to this day. So thanks very much. And he was campaigning, and the rest of us were campaigning for, still are, for an extra €50 on those CE schemes. The 7-year-old has been abolished already, and I hope that we can make more progress together on that. And it's good to see a room here of people who, I hope anyway, believe that the answers to some of the problems that we have in society is to answer the homeless situation, the housing situation. They believe in more social housing, who believe in an NHS-style health service, who believe in better public transport, and who believe that the trade union movement should be supported, workers' rights should be built up and supported when they are there, and people who believe that people who are fleeing a foreign land from a war are not to blame for this, and will resist any narrative from right-wing people who are trying to blame Ukrainians for any difficulties in the lack of services that we have in this country. I think it's our responsibility to stand up to that if we detect it in the community. I was listening to the Taoiseach a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that there's a 3 or 4% unemployment rate in this country, but that's not taking into account the amount of low-paid workers, people who are working a small amount of hours for a small amount of wages, and who cannot afford to put money in their car, can't afford medical bills, can't afford childcare, can't afford to run their car and pay their heating bills over the summer. So there's an awful lot of working poor, even though on paper it does seem to be a low unemployment rate. Those people want to work, but sometimes they can't afford to. I was listening yesterday as well on Radio Kerry, and there was a pensioner wrote in, and we have heard this type of situation in a two-tier society that we have. He has a pension, and he's €7 over the amount of the limit for the fuel allowance, and he has been denied that with the increases in energy bills that we all know about, and that threshold is still very, very low for him, and he is facing in on his own to a winter of uncertainty. There's some phrases that politicians use which are maybe a bit cliched. This is a tsunami of complaints. We're inundated with this and that, and I've used them myself probably on one or two occasions. But the amount of notices to quit coming into this country has even the housing officers in Kerry County Council worried. There's 3 families in Kerry per week coming onto being made homeless, and we ourselves have particularly struck by one family who were living in one part of the town in a house for 15 years with their family, and they were made homeless, and they ended up in BB's hostel in one room, the mother and father and 2 or 3 children. They eventually did get sorted, but imagine the amount of uncertainty that struck into that family for the few weeks that they were inside. And that's happening north, south, east and west in Kerry, and it's, as Marion said, these things don't happen by accident. The lack of investment in social housing, which has gone on for the last 10 years, is really coming home to roost now, and that must be addressed. There is also a problem when people are seeking extra money, and I spoke to a teacher last year who we were trying to help, and he is in receipt of the working family payment. His children are in college, and he's not getting the student grant. because his son did a milk round for the summer, earned €1,000, put them over the threshold, and he has been denied the Susie grant for that child when he went away to college. And I think it was Beck was talking about the students who are travelling up, and we have students in Kerry who are in this town who are getting up in the morning at 5:30 to get the green bus up to Limerick and returning that evening at 5 o'clock in the evening because they can't afford to stay away from home. And that is not acceptable in a society which, as Marion said, is one of the richest countries in Europe. So there's an awful lot of other issues that we could talk about. Cancer diagnosis is another one where people cannot get medical cards even though they have a cancer diagnosis for a long time, and they are being denied that, and the worry of that on top of everything else is driving people to the brink. I suppose the challenges which we see, what are we going to do about it? So we'll be launching, Sinn Fein will be launching our alternative budget. You've probably heard it's been leaked, probably like a lot of the other leaks have been going on. And we want to, as you probably know, cap energy prices, and Beck mentioned that as well. We want to introduce a windfall tax to address the price gouging which has no doubt gone on by all of the energy companies. We want to introduce a cash payment, a tapered cash payment to lower and middle income workers, because there are people who are, who do have jobs, but they are entitled to that as well to help them over the current crisis. We also want to introduce a double child benefit payment coming up to Christmas, and these payments will go until the end of February to get people over the winter, to give them some sort of security and to put their minds at ease to address the anxiety that they are facing and all the uncertainty. So to conclude, the challenges that we all face are massive. Somebody mentioned earlier on in relation to the water campaign, but it's heartening to see the unity at the table here, the organisation that has gone on from people who helped to get people together. This is a campaign about ordinary people, and people power, like the water charges, will triumph. We saw the water charges campaign, and the victory that was brought there was successful after a long and hard graft. So if we stick together, if we keep advocating and pushing for ordinary people, for ordinary workers, ordinary families, I think that we can have a big success in this. There's a lot of money, the government have a lot of money of a surplus. I think it's, if you include the COVID money that's due to come back, there's about 6 billion there to throw around. So that we need that to be directed in the right way, not like it was before in bank bailouts and paying Anglo-Irish 60 billion to banks now, but give it back to the people who are struggling at the moment, because there's nothing around. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much for all of our 4 speakers today, giving us quite accurate local